What happens when a respected television host tries to have a normal conversation with his guest, only to watch everything spiral completely out of control? It only took 38 seconds for Jasmine Crockett to destroy her own reputation and get herself kicked off one of the most watched talk shows in America. This is the story of how one guest managed to turn what should have been a simple interview into television chaos. Bill Maher had been hosting his show for decades. He knew how to handle difficult guests. He knew how to keep conversations flowing. But nothing could have prepared him for what Jasmine Crockett was about to unleash. The lights were bright in the studio that night. The audience was settled in their seats, ready for another episode of thoughtful discussion and maybe a few laughs. Bill sat behind his desk, looking professional, as always, in his dark suit. His notes were organized. His questions were prepared. Everything seemed normal. Jasmine walked onto the set with confidence. She smiled and waved at the audience. She shook hands with Bill and took her seat across from him. The cameras rolled. The show began. "Welcome back, everyone," Bill said to the camera, his voice warm and inviting. "Tonight I have with me Jasmine Crockett, who has been making headlines recently for her work in politics. Jasmine, thanks for being here." "Thanks for having me, Bill," Jasmine replied, settling into her chair. She looked comfortable, relaxed even. "So let's start with something simple," Bill continued, glancing down at his notes. "You've been very vocal about several issues lately. What would you say drives your passion for public service?" It was a softball question, the kind of question that gives a guest the chance to talk about their background, their motivations, their goals. Most guests would smile and give a thoughtful answer about wanting to help people or make a difference in their community. But Jasmine's face changed. Her smile faded. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You know what drives me, Bill?" she said, leaning forward in her chair. "What drives me is people like you sitting in your comfortable studios, asking questions like you actually care about the answers." The audience shifted uncomfortably. Bill raised his eyebrows, clearly surprised by the hostile tone. "I'm sorry. I'm not sure I understand what you mean by that," Bill said, keeping his voice calm and professional. "Oh, you understand exactly what I mean," Jasmine shot back. "You media types are all the same. You bring people like me on your shows so you can look diverse and inclusive, but you don't actually want to hear what we have to say." Bill set down his pen and looked directly at his guest. "Jasmine, I brought you on the show because I thought you had interesting perspectives to share. I'm genuinely interested in hearing your thoughts." "Interesting perspectives?" Jasmine laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That's rich, coming from someone who has built his entire career on mocking people who look like me." The tension in the studio was becoming thick. Members of the audience exchanged glances. The camera operators continued filming, but you could sense their discomfort behind the cameras. "I think there might be some misunderstanding here," Bill said, his voice still steady. "I've never mocked anyone based on their appearance or background. I try to treat all my guests with respect." "Respect?" Jasmine's voice was getting louder. "You call this respect? Bringing me on here to be your token guest so you can check off your diversity box?" Bill took a deep breath. He had dealt with difficult interviews before, but this was escalating quickly beyond anything he had experienced. "Jasmine, I think we may have gotten off on the wrong foot here," he said. "Why don't we start over? Tell me about the issues that matter most to you." But Jasmine was not interested in starting over. She was just getting warmed up. "The issues that matter most to me?" she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "How about the issue of hosts like you pretending to care about real problems while you sit in your ivory tower making jokes about everything?" "I do care about real problems," Bill replied, a slight edge creeping into his voice for the first time. "That's why I do this show. That's why I bring on guests from all different backgrounds to discuss important topics." "Important topics?" Jasmine stood up from her chair suddenly, catching everyone off guard. "You think this is important? You think sitting here in your fancy studio talking about politics like it's some kind of game is important?" The audience was completely silent now. Bill remained seated, but his posture had changed. He was clearly trying to maintain control of the situation. "Jasmine, please sit down," he said calmly. "Let's have a conversation like adults." "Like adults?" Jasmine's voice was reaching a fever pitch. "You want to talk like adults? Then let's talk about how you and people like you have been part of the problem for years." Bill finally stood up as well, but his movements were measured and controlled. "I'm going to ask you one more time to please sit down and let's discuss this calmly," he said. "This is my show, and I'm trying to have a respectful conversation with you." "Your show?" Jasmine laughed again, that same bitter laugh from before. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. Your show, your rules, your way of doing things. Well, maybe I don't want to play by your rules anymore." The situation was spiraling completely out of control. Bill looked toward his producers off camera, clearly seeking guidance on how to handle what was becoming an impossible situation. Jasmine, I understand you may have strong feelings about certain topics, Bill said, making one last attempt to salvage the interview. But we need to be able to discuss things in a civil manner. Civil manner? Jasmine's eyes flashed with anger. You want to talk about civility while you sit there in your position of privilege, judging everyone else? I'm not judging anyone, Bill replied, his patience clearly wearing thin. I'm trying to have a discussion. A discussion? Jasmine moved closer to Bill's desk. This isn't a discussion. This is you trying to control the narrative like you always do. The security team was now visible at the edges of the camera frame, ready to step in if necessary. Bill noticed them and held up a hand, signaling them to wait. Jasmine, I need you to calm down, he said firmly. We can disagree about things, but we need to do it respectfully. But respectful disagreement was clearly not what Jasmine had in mind. She was about to cross a line that would end her television appearance forever. You know what your problem is, Bill? Jasmine said, her voice now filled with venom. You think you're so much better than everyone else because you have this little platform. But you're nothing but a washed-up comedian who got lucky. The words hit the studio like a slap. Even the camera operator seemed to flinch. Bill's face went pale, but he maintained his composure. That was uncalled for, he said quietly. I've been nothing but respectful to you since you walked onto this stage. Respectful? Jasmine threw her head back and laughed loudly. You call this respect? You call bringing me on here to be your dancing monkey respectful? I brought you on to discuss important issues, Bill replied, his voice getting firmer. Issues that you said you cared about, but instead of having that conversation, you've chosen to attack me personally. Attack you? Jasmine's eyes widened in mock surprise. Oh, poor Bill. Did I hurt your little feelings? Are you going to cry about it? The audience was completely stunned. Some people had their mouths hanging open. Others were looking around nervously, wondering if they should leave. Jasmine, I'm going to give you one last chance to sit down and have a civilized discussion, Bill said, his patience finally reaching its breaking point. Otherwise, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Ask me to leave? Jasmine laughed even louder this time. You can't handle the truth, so you want to kick me out? That's typical. That's exactly what I expected from someone like you. Someone like me? Bill repeated, his eyebrows raising. What exactly do you mean by that? You know exactly what I mean, Jasmine said, pointing her finger directly at him. You privileged, out of touch, fake liberals who think you can solve all the world's problems from behind your desk. Bill took a step back, clearly trying to process what was happening. I have never claimed to solve all the world's problems, he said. I'm just trying to have conversations about them. That's what this show is for. Conversations? Jasmine's voice reached a new level of intensity. You mean lectures? You mean you talking down to people while pretending to be on their side? I don't talk down to anyone, Bill said, his own voice rising for the first time. I treat my guests as equals, and I expect the same in return. Equals? Jasmine moved even closer to his desk. You think we're equals? You think someone like you could ever understand what someone like me goes through? I don't claim to understand everyone's experiences, Bill replied. That's why I have guests on the show. To learn from different perspectives. Learn? Jasmine's laugh had become almost maniacal. The only thing you want to learn is how to look good for your audience. You don't care about real people or real problems. Bill looked directly into the camera and then back at Jasmine. I care deeply about real problems, he said. But I can't have a productive conversation with someone who refuses to engage in good faith. Good faith? Jasmine slammed her hand down on his desk, causing everyone in the studio to jump. You want to talk about good faith? How about we talk about how you built your career making fun of people who can't fight back? That's not true, Bill said firmly. I've always punched up, never down. I go after powerful people who deserve criticism. Powerful people? Jasmine's voice was getting shrill. You go after anyone who gets you ratings. You don't care who you hurt as long as people keep watching. The tension in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Security had moved closer, though they were trying to stay out of camera view. Jasmine, you're making accusations that simply aren't true, Bill said. And you're doing it in front of a live audience who came here to see a thoughtful discussion. Thoughtful discussion? Jasmine turned toward the audience. Is this what you call thoughtful? Him sitting there acting like he's better than everyone else? Several audience members looked uncomfortable. Some were whispering to each other. Others were checking their phones, probably posting about what they were witnessing. The audience came here to see a civil conversation, Bill said, not to watch someone have a public meltdown. Those words seemed to push Jasmine over the edge completely. A public meltdown? She screamed. You think this is a meltdown? This is me telling the truth for once on your fake show. This is my show, Bill said, his voice now carrying real authority. And I'm asking you to leave. Your show, your rules, your world, Jasmine said mockingly. Well, guess what, Bill? Not everyone has to play by your rules anymore. She moved around to the side of his desk, getting uncomfortably close to where he was standing. Jasmine, I need you to step back, Bill said, signaling to security with a subtle hand gesture. Or what? She challenged. You'll call security? You'll have me dragged out of here? Is that how you handle people who tell you the truth? I handle people who can't control themselves by asking them to leave, Bill replied, which is what I'm doing right now. Control myself? Jasmine's voice reached a crescendo. I'm perfectly in control. I'm in control enough to tell you exactly what I think of you and your pathetic excuse for a show. 2 security guards had now stepped into camera view, moving slowly but purposefully toward the desk area. Ma'am, we need you to come with us, one of the guards said politely but firmly. Don't you dare touch me, Jasmine snapped at the security guard before turning back to Bill. This is exactly what I'm talking about. The moment someone challenges you, you have them removed. I'm having you removed because you're being disruptive and disrespectful, Bill said. Not because you're challenging me. Disruptive? Jasmine's laugh had become almost hysterical. The truth is disruptive to people like you, isn't it? The security guards moved closer, but they were clearly trying to handle the situation as gently as possible. Ma'am, please come with us voluntarily, the first guard said again. Jasmine looked around the studio wildly, as if she was just now realizing where she was and what was happening. But instead of calming down, she seemed to get more agitated. You think you can silence me? Jasmine shouted, backing away from the security guards but moving closer to the audience. You think you can just make me disappear because I'm telling the truth about what kind of person you really are? Bill remained behind his desk, watching the situation unfold with a mixture of concern and disbelief. Nobody is trying to silence you, he said, his voice steady despite the chaos. You're welcome to share your opinions, but you need to do it respectfully, and you need to stay in your designated area. Respectfully? Jasmine spun around to face him again. I'll show you the same respect you've shown to every guest who's ever disagreed with you, which is none. The audience was now visibly uncomfortable. Some people had started to get up from their seats, clearly wanting to leave. Others were filming with their phones, capturing every moment of the breakdown. Ma'am, we really need you to come with us now, the second security guard said, taking another step forward. Don't you come near me, Jasmine warned, pointing at both guards. I know my rights. I know you can't just drag me out of here for speaking my mind. We can remove you for disrupting the show and refusing to follow basic safety protocols, the first guard replied calmly. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. Jasmine looked around the studio wildly, as if searching for an escape route or an ally. Finding neither, she turned back to Bill with pure fury in her eyes. This is what you do, isn't it? She said, her voice now hoarse from all the shouting. When someone calls you out on your garbage, you have them removed. When someone won't play your little game, you silence them. I'm not silencing anyone, Bill said, moving slightly away from his desk. You're silencing yourself with this behavior. You had a platform here tonight to share your message, and instead, you chose to attack me personally. Attack you? Jasmine's voice cracked with emotion. I'm telling the truth about you. I'm telling the truth about this whole fake setup you've created here. She gestured wildly at the studio around her. This whole thing is a lie, she continued. The lights, the cameras, the audience, the fake conversations. It's all designed to make you look good and make your guests look foolish. That's simply not true, Bill said firmly. I've had thousands of guests on this show over the years. Most of them have been treated with respect and have had productive conversations. Productive for who? Jasmine demanded. Productive for your ratings? Productive for your ego? Because they certainly haven't been productive for the people whose lives you make jokes about. The security guards exchanged glances and moved a little closer. It was clear they were preparing to physically escort her out if necessary. Ma'am, this is your final warning, the first guard said. Please come with us voluntarily or we will have to remove you. Remove me then, Jasmine said defiantly. Show everyone what happens when someone dares to tell Bill Maher the truth about himself. Bill stepped forward slightly, making one last attempt to defuse the situation. Jasmine, you still have time to salvage this, he said. You can sit down. We can finish this interview professionally. And you can make your points in a way that people will actually listen to. Salvage this? Jasmine laughed bitterly. The only thing that needs salvaging is your reputation after people see how you treat guests who don't bow down to you. I treat guests the way they treat me, Bill replied. You came on here hostile from the very first question. I've been trying to have a civil conversation this entire time. Civil conversation? Jasmine's voice reached a new pitch. There's nothing civil about this setup. There's nothing civil about bringing people on here just so you can make them look bad. She pointed accusingly at him again. You're a fraud, Bill Maher, she declared loudly. You're a fake liberal who pretends to care about progress while you tear down anyone who actually tries to make real change. The audience gasped. Even for a show known for controversial moments, this was unprecedented territory. That's enough, Bill said, his voice carrying real authority for the first time all evening. Security, please escort Miss Crockett out of the building. You can't handle the truth, can you? Jasmine shouted as the guards approached her. You can't handle someone who won't play your little game. Ma'am, we need you to come with us right now, the first guard said, reaching out to gently but firmly guide her toward the exit. Get your hands off me, Jasmine yelled, pulling away from the guard. I'll leave, but I'm not going quietly. She turned toward the camera one last time. Remember this moment, she said, speaking directly to the viewers at home. Remember what happens when someone tries to tell the truth on Bill Maher's show. They get silenced. They get removed. They get treated like criminals. You're being removed for being disruptive, Bill called after her. Not for your opinions. My opinions? Jasmine laughed as the guards began to escort her toward the exit. My opinions are too real for your fake show. As she was led away, she continued shouting, This is what fake progressive